Imagine driving down a dark, snowy road in New Hampshire when suddenly you see a car sitting sideways near the edge of the road. The front end is damaged. The car looks like it was just in an accident. So you slow down, you stop, and then you see her, a 21-year-old woman standing next to the vehicle. She doesn't appear seriously injured. A nearby driver asks if she needs help. She says she's okay. She says she already called for assistance. Everything seems normal, just a simple winter accident. But then something happens that turns this into one of the strangest missing person cases in America. Because when police arrive, the car is still there. The accident scene is still there. Her personal belongings are still inside. But Maura Murray is gone. No one saw where she went. No one knows if she walked away, if someone picked her up, or if something much darker happened on that road that night. And the strangest part, the entire mystery may come down to just a few minutes between the crash and the arrival of police. This is the disappearance of Maura Murray. Before we get into the mystery of what happened on that snowy road, there's something important you need to know. Because Maura Murray wasn't someone who was looking for danger. She wasn't someone who disappeared because she was living some secret double life. At least that's not how the people who knew her described her. She was a 21-year-old college student. She was smart. She was athletic. She had a family that cared about her. And from the outside, her life looked like it was moving in the right direction. Maura was born in Massachusetts. She grew up in a close family with her parents and siblings. From a young age, she was known as someone who worked hard, someone who set goals, someone who wanted to build a future for herself. By 2004, she was a student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She was studying nursing, a demanding program, the kind of program where students spend years preparing for a career where small mistakes can have serious consequences. And this detail matters because when someone disappears, especially someone young, people immediately start searching for a hidden explanation. They ask, was something wrong? Was someone chasing them? Was there something nobody knew? But with Maura, the reality was more complicated because, like many people in their early 20s, she was dealing with normal life pressures, school, relationships, stress, uncertainty about the future, things that many young adults experience. And then, a few days before she disappeared, something happened that made her life more complicated. On February 5th, 2004, Maura was involved in a minor car accident. She was driving her father's Toyota Corolla near the university campus. The car hit a guardrail. The damage was not catastrophic, but it created a stressful situation. After the accident, Maura contacted her father. She was upset. She was dealing with the aftermath of the crash, and according to reports, her father came to help her. At first glance, this might seem like a small detail, a simple accident, something that happens every day. But when you look at everything that happened later, some people started wondering, was this connected? Was Maura under unusual stress? Was something happening in her life that we don't fully understand? Now, this is where we need to be careful because over the years, a lot of theories have appeared around Maura's disappearance. Some are based on facts, some are based on assumptions, and some are just internet speculation. The challenge with this case is separating what we know from what people think they know. So let's focus on the facts. What we know is this. On February 9th, 2004, Maura was still a college student. She had not vanished yet. She had a normal day ahead of her, at least that's what everyone thought. That morning, something unusual happened. Maura contacted some of her professors and employers. She told them she needed to be away for a short time. She also sent an email to a faculty member. Then she did something that would become one of the biggest questions in the entire case. She packed her things. According to investigators, Maura packed items into her car. She gathered clothing, some belongings, and then she left campus. But where was she going? That's the question. Because unlike a planned vacation, there was no clear explanation. She hadn't told her family exactly where she was headed. She hadn't announced a trip. There was no obvious destination. And this is where the story starts to change, because up until this point, Maura was simply a college student dealing with life. But on this day, she got into her car and drove away. And nobody knew that this drive would become the final confirmed journey of her life. Later that afternoon, Maura was seen purchasing alcohol at a store. She bought several items, including alcohol. Then she continued driving north, away from Massachusetts, toward New Hampshire. And this is where another mystery begins, because why was Maura going there? Was she planning to meet someone? Was she trying to get away for a few days? Was she overwhelmed and looking for space? We can ask these questions, but the truth is we don't have a confirmed answer. What we do know is that sometime that evening, Maura's car ended up on a dark road in New Hampshire, a road where one decision would change everything, because the next person who saw Maura would see her standing beside a crashed car, and within minutes, she would disappear. By the time the sun started going down on February 9th, 2004, Maura Murray was already hundreds of miles away from where she had started. She was driving north, away from her university, away from Massachusetts, and toward a place where almost nobody knew she was going. The road ahead was dark, the weather was cold, and eventually Maura reached a small town in New Hampshire called Haverhill. This area was not a busy city. It wasn't filled with traffic. It wasn't the kind of place where hundreds of people would notice a car on the side of the road. It was quiet, rural, the kind of place where a person can disappear quickly. The road was Route 112, a narrow road surrounded by trees, a road that, especially in winter, could become dangerous. And sometime around 7:27 p.m., something happened. Maura's Saturn sedan left the road. The car went off the roadway and crashed into a snowbank near the intersection of Route 112. The impact was enough to damage the vehicle, but not enough to seriously injure her. At least, that is what the evidence suggests. A nearby resident named Butch Atwood was driving a school bus in the area when he saw the crashed vehicle. He stopped to check what happened. And this moment is one of the most important moments in the entire case, because Butch was one of the last people known to have seen Maura alive. When he approached the car, he saw a young woman standing outside. She appeared to be okay. She wasn't trapped inside. She wasn't visibly suffering from a major injury. But something about the situation was unusual, because when he offered to help Maura, she declined, stating she already called AAA. He knew this wasn't true because there was no cell phone service in the area. She allegedly asked him not to call the police. Now, this is where people often ask the same question. Why didn't she just wait for help? And honestly, that question is at the center of this entire mystery. Because from the outside, the situation doesn't seem that strange. A person has a car accident, someone offers help. They say help is already coming. A few minutes later, police arrive. Simple, except that's not what happened. Butch Atwood returned home, and because he was concerned, he called 911 himself. At around 7:43 p.m., the emergency call was made. The dispatcher received a report about a vehicle accident. A car had gone off the road, a woman was standing near the vehicle, and someone needed to check the scene. Now, here's where the timeline becomes incredibly important because police were not far away. The response time was only a matter of minutes. But when the officer arrived, Maura was gone. Think about that. A witness had seen her. A call had been placed. Emergency responders were on their way. The car was still sitting there, but the person who had been standing beside it had disappeared. And suddenly, a normal roadside accident became something completely different. A missing person case. When police examined the scene, they found Maura's Saturn. The vehicle was still there. The front end was damaged. The airbags had deployed. The car was not in a condition where she could simply drive away. Inside the vehicle, they found personal belongings, items that suggested Maura had not planned to abandon everything. But one thing was missing, Maura herself. And this is where investigators face the first major mystery. How does someone disappear from a roadside accident scene in just a few minutes? There were no witnesses who saw her walking away, no confirmed sighting after Butch left, no clear trail, no obvious explanation. The road itself created another problem. Route 112 was not a place with constant traffic. At night, in winter, there may have been long periods where nobody passed by, which means there was a very small window of time, a few minutes where something happened. And whatever happened quickly. So investigators had to ask, did Maura leave the scene voluntarily? Did someone stop and offer her a ride? Did she walk away into the darkness? Or did something happen that nobody saw? Over the years, each possibility has been debated. But before we jump into theories, we need to look closer at the evidence left behind. Because sometimes the things people leave behind tell a bigger story than the person who disappears. Inside Maura's car, investigators found clues, her belongings, her personal items, her plans, pieces of a life that suddenly stopped. And among those items, there was one detail that raised even more questions. Something that suggested Maura may have been dealing with more than just a simple car accident that night, because the crash itself might not have been the beginning of the mystery. It might have been the final chapter of something that had already started earlier that day. When police arrived at the crash scene, they were expecting to deal with a simple situation, a car accident, a driver who needed help, a normal roadside emergency, but instead they found a scene that created more questions than answers because Maura Murray was gone. The Saturn was still there. The snow-covered road was still there. The accident scene was still there. But the person at the center of it had disappeared. And now investigators had a different problem. They couldn't ask Maura what happened. They could only look at what she left behind. And sometimes in missing person cases, the things people leave behind tell the story. Inside the vehicle, investigators found personal belongings, clothing, books, maps, school-related items, things that belong to Maura's everyday life. But there was one important detail. The car didn't look like someone had planned to disappear forever. It looked like someone who expected to come back. And this is one of the biggest questions in the case. If Maura planned to leave, why leave so much behind? But then investigators discovered something else, something that made them look closer at what had happened before the crash. Earlier that day, before Maura left campus, she had taken several steps that seemed unusual. Why leave so much behind? She contacted professors and employers. She informed them she would be away. She packed belongings into her car and she started driving north. But where exactly was she going? That question has never been fully answered. There was no confirmed vacation plan, no hotel reservation, no clear announcement to friends or family saying, I'm going away for a few days. She was simply driving. And this is where the mystery gets more complicated because the crash itself was only one part of the story. The bigger question was, why was Maura in New Hampshire in the first place? Some people believe she may have been planning to take a break, to get away from stress, to have some time alone. Others have suggested there may have been another reason, a personal issue, a relationship problem, something she did not tell people around her. But here is where we need to separate facts from theories. The truth is, we do not know exactly why Maura drove north. And that uncertainty is one of the reasons this case has remained so fascinating. Because the disappearance doesn't start at the crash, the disappearance starts earlier with the choices Maura made that day. This raised another question. Was Maura planning to go somewhere? Was she planning to spend some time away? Was she overwhelmed and trying to escape from pressure? Again, we can ask these questions, but we cannot pretend we know the answer. And that is what makes this case difficult. There are many pieces, but they don't always create one clear picture. One of the most discussed pieces of evidence was a letter. Before leaving campus, Maura had written a letter to her boyfriend. The contents of that letter have led to many discussions over the years. Some people believe the letter showed that Maura was planning to take a break. Others believe it suggested she was dealing with emotional stress. But regardless of interpretation, one thing is clear. Something was happening in Maura's life during those days, something that made her leave. The question is, what exactly? Was she simply trying to get away for a short time? Was she planning to disappear temporarily? Or was there something else happening that nobody knew about? And then we reach another strange part of the story, the timing. Because only hours after leaving Massachusetts, Maura ended up on a dark road in New Hampshire. She crashed, she spoke with a witness, and then she vanished. It is almost like there are two separate mysteries happening at the same time. The first mystery, why did Maura leave? The second mystery, what happened after the crash? And solving one may be the key to solving the other. Over the years, many people have focused on the second mystery. Who picked her up? Did she walk away? Was someone else involved? But there is another possibility. Maybe the most important clues are not on that road. Maybe they are in the hours before it. Because before Maura Murray disappeared, she made a series of decisions, and every decision created another question. Why did she drive north? Why didn't she tell more people? Why that location? Why that night? And perhaps the biggest question, was the crash the moment everything went wrong? Or was it simply the moment when the world finally noticed something was wrong? Because when police arrived at Route 112, they were not looking at the beginning of a mystery. They were looking at the final known location of a person who had already started disappearing. More than 20 years have passed since Maura Murray disappeared, but somehow the mystery has never really gotten smaller. If anything, it has only grown. Because usually when someone disappears, Time brings answers. Someone remembers something. A piece of evidence is discovered. A mistake is made. Something changes. But with Maura's case, the biggest questions have remained. What happened during those few minutes on Route 112? Where did Maura go? And why has no trace of her ever been found? Over the years, hundreds of people have searched for answers. Investigators, journalists, independent researchers, and ordinary people who became fascinated by the case. The internet played a huge role in keeping this story alive. People analyzed timelines, studied maps, reviewed witness statements, looked at every possible clue. And that's unusual because most missing person cases slowly disappear from public attention. But Maura's case became something different, a mystery that people continued trying to solve. One reason is the amount of information available. We know a lot about that night. We know where she crashed. We know who saw her. We know when police arrived. We know what was found at the scene. But the most important moment is still missing. The moment between Maura is standing beside her car and Maura is gone. That small window of time contains the answer. But after decades, nobody knows exactly what happened inside it. There have been searches over the years, new interviews, new theories, new attempts to understand the case, but no discovery has provided the final answer. And maybe that is what makes this case so haunting. It's not a mystery where there are no clues, there are clues everywhere. The problem is they don't connect. A crashed car, a missing student, a phone call, a witness, a dark road, a cold night. Each piece exists, but the picture is incomplete. Some people believe Maura left that night voluntarily. Maybe she wanted a fresh start. Maybe she needed time away. Maybe the crash was simply the beginning of a new chapter. Others believe she became a victim of a terrible coincidence. The wrong place, the wrong time, the wrong person. And some believe the truth is something nobody has even considered yet. But after all these years, there is one thing almost everyone agrees on. Someone knows what happened. Somewhere there is an answer, a person, a memory, a piece of information that could finally explain what happened on that road. And until that answer is found, Maura Murray remains one of the most mysterious missing person cases in America. Because the strange thing about this story is not that a person disappeared. Sadly, that happens more often than we would like to admit. The strange thing is how close everyone was to the answer. A witness was there, a call was made, police arrived, the car was found, everything happened in front of people, and yet the most important part of the story disappeared with her. So what do you think happened to Maura Murray? Did she leave the scene on her own? Did someone offer her a ride? Or was there something else happening that night that we still don't know about? After more than 20 years, the road in New Hampshire is still quiet. The car is long gone, the investigation continues, but one question remains: where did Maura Murray go? Thanks for watching. If you want more true crime and unsolved mystery cases like this, make sure to subscribe. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next case.